are marks of true circumcision that God expects Jesus to carry even after his resurrection. Because the circumcision mark is already there, right, for all the Jewish people. So all these markings I mentioned briefly to help you get the perspective of why Thomas was expecting some marks, some markings to be certain that this is Jesus himself and not somebody else. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas was astonished, and he said to him, "My Lord and my God." There was a Muslim guy who once challenged me saying, "Is there any place in the Bible, in the New Testament, particularly in John's Gospel that we distribute, where Jesus is equated with God?" I said, "There are many places." He said, "Is there a direct reference?" I immediately told him this. And then he was surprised. He ran away, like he didn't read this. Thomas said to Jesus, "My Lord and my God." Jesus is called as God by Thomas in this place. Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not yet seen and have believed." Jesus was reprimanding them. Jesus was not commending them. Jesus was saying that twice I came. First time you went into the empty tomb and you saw all the signs. And I showed myself to Mary Magdalene. You did not believe. Second time I came with all of you. And now with Thomas, this is the second appearance, collectively. This is the second appearance. And in the second appearance also, you didn't believe that I am sent by God. I am who I am. You didn't believe. Jesus is reprimanding all these guys, particularly Thomas, who couldn't believe. And he's saying that there would be people who would just hear the story of the empty tomb and believe, people like you and me. And then John introduces, very crafty John is, in his writing, he introduces in this place the purpose of his gospel. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Because of lack of time, I don't know if I would get to explain this particular verse and why it is put in here and what is the significance of it in the whole narrative. But one thing I can point out, see, Jesus gave two radical signs to his disciples of his resurrection. Immediately, John comes and says, Jesus, the resurrected one, he's the Messiah. He is the divine one. He is the Son of God. And if you believe in him, you will have life in the age to come. So Jesus is conveying this message. This is his message. This is the kingdom message. He's conveying his message through John to all those who are hearing, like John's audience. And then comes the call narrative. Jesus is again calling Peter, John, and James in the same way he called in the beginning, in the first chapter. It's like the repetition. So I sometimes feel that this 21st chapter was an afterthought or something. Maybe John would have concluded here, finished it, and then again this one more chapter was added so that it would synchronize with the first chapter where these disciples are called by Jesus in a similar way, so that there will be some kind of a Hebrew way of writing. They will start and finish with the similar thoughts, So maybe he wanted to do something like that, But here we see that instead of doing that, John is actually writing one more, it's like this thought is finished. There's two resurrection appearances are finished, and that is sufficient for all people to believe. Then he is writing it in a sense to help people understand what would happen eventually, what did happen eventually. So Jesus appeared to them in the in the area where Jesus had promised, like the Sea of Galilee, and they ate with him. This is like Moses, Isaiah narrative, burning fire, coals, fish, right? And the calling is the same call narrative that comes in the beginning. And then Jesus talks with Peter in person. Remember, in-person talks in John's Gospel have more significance, like the talk with Thomas. It's an in-person, like personal talk. It has a lot of significance, like the talk with Nicodemus or the Samaritan woman. So here Jesus is reinstating Peter, who denied him thrice, of course, but 3 resurrection appearances he has given already. Even after that, Peter's mind is still in the fish, still in being a fisherman. His mind has not yet understood that he is the shepherd of the sheep. He is now Jesus appointed leader of the pack, and he has to feed his lambs. He had to start the Gentile ministry in Cornelius' house, take care of those sheep which are coming from other shepherds, and feed them too. Peter has not yet understood this thing, which he should have understood according to Jesus in the first instance itself. So 3 times Jesus gives the resurrection appearance. So the third appearance is written separately. After the 2 appearances, he's writing the third appearance separately, because for everybody else the 2 appearances are enough, sufficient, but for Peter and for those who are very close and intimate, the third appearance is required. Now, third appearance is like kind of final. This is it. Even after this, if you didn't get this message, you were never going to get it. And so what I feel about this, whatever John has written in 21st chapter, is that, John has, in a sense, concluded with the 20th chapter, that particular thing that he wrote. But this is kind of a afterthought, not just to match the first call narrative and to say that Peter and James and John are still in ministry, not just for that purpose. That is one purpose, to say that these people have not fallen apart. They are still continuing the ministry of the Word of God. But more than that, this is about John telling people that we were more hard-hearted than you think you are. It's a kind of an encouragement, a further encouragement to believe. If you believe, you would have life in the age to come. Okay, there are many more signs, and I have no time or paper to write this. He concluded it, but he's writing this as an afterthought to say to those people who are struggling to believe, like you and me. Even after all these things, so this much is sufficient to believe, but even after all these things, we were still hard-hearted. We couldn't believe, man. We couldn't believe. Even after Jesus did all these things, we couldn't believe. So what I feel, it's not just for the stylistic purpose of, matching the first call narrative with the second call narrative, or to say that Peter, John, and James are still in the ministry, that the 21st chapter is recorded. The 21st chapter and those particular verses about this concluding remarks are given before 21st chapter. It is given for further encouragement, is what I believe. What I understand is John is saying that this much is sufficient, like Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene and Jesus appearing to the 12 disciples and then to Thomas, is sufficient for anybody to believe. But even after this, if you are not able to believe like us, we were hard-hearted, then you can read on and see what happened to us. What happened next, kind of thing. So he says that Jesus asked him the question 3rd time. And Peter was deeply hurt the third time. See, until the second time, Peter has no problem. Peter is like, yes, I believe, I do believe. You also say, I also say, we do believe, we do believe. But actually, do we believe? You know? So when the third time Jesus asked him, do you love me? Peter said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. That is to the cross. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death. So Peter would also be crucified in the end, but he would choose to be crucified upside down so that he could touch his master Jesus' feet. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. So this is the final prophecy for Peter, that you are not going to die now. Even if you go to jail, even if people make fun of you, even if people receive your message or reject your message, you are not going to die now. You would become older. You are young now, but there will be a time when you will be old. Right now, you are wearing your own clothes and going everywhere. You choose what to do. But in that day, when that happens, someone else will clothe you. And they will lead you to the cross, to the death where you do not want to go. Nobody wants to die. Nobody likes death. Jesus conquered death. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Follow me. So until now, Jesus had not said, follow me. Now, in the first call narrative, the moment Peter humbles himself and says, I'm a sinful man, please go away, Peter immediately is reinstated, or in a kind of Jesus immediately says to him, follow me. But here, the follow me happens much later. There is a big gap. There is a big conversation in between. It's not just because Peter denied 3 times. It is also because Jesus appeared 3 times. Still, Peter did not believe. This is the aspect that many times we overlook, because we look for signs, the matching signs, not from the immediate literal context, but we look for it from somewhere else, like when Jesus was upon the cross, now Jesus is resurrected, like that. That is how we look at the connections. But if we look at the immediate context, we would get more deeper and more stronger connections. Now, Jesus making Peter confess 3 times that he loves God or loves Jesus because he denied Jesus 3 times is not at all the point. That is not at all the point. That was already forgiven. Jesus already forgave him, already forgot it. Jesus rose again, gave 3 appearances that he's alive. And still Peter wants to fish. Peter is already sent by God. Like, he didn't say, follow me there. He said, you just go, man. Jesus is sending him with authority, with the Holy Spirit, saying, if you forgive the Caiaphas, he will be forgiven. If you forgive Annas, he will be forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they will not be forgiven. That is the kind of authority with which Jesus is sending these people, including Peter. But Peter doesn't seem to get a grip of it. Peter doesn't grasp it. Peter doesn't believe it. Peter still needs more signs or more confirmations from God to believe that he's called to do what he's called to do. This can happen to you. This can happen to me. We may be getting signs from God, but still we may be like, is that true? Is that the path I must take? We would be reluctant because we don't see anything. It's like God sending out into sea and saying, you just barefooted, cross over the sea, and you'll reach the other side. And we don't know how this is going to happen unless we have read the Bible where Moses sits in front of the sea and he cries to God and he prays and the sea divides. We see a lot of people with Moses, and that is where we miss the point. We think that, okay, there were so many people with Moses, all of them were praying, maybe that is why the sea opened. It has nothing to do with these other people praying for Moses. They were ready to stone him to death. They were saying, man, you brought us from there, and now Pharaoh is after us, he will kill us, or else we may drown in this water. You are to be blamed. And they were about to kill him. Moses was alone. This is the point. Peter, again, when he is called by Jesus, he is alone. He has to take that decision. When Isaiah is called, when Moses is called, when Peter is called, when John is called, they are alone. They have to take that decision. Nobody else can take the decision for them. Jesus appeared first time. Peter saw all the clothes, and Peter saw Mary Magdalene's amazement and her testimony. Peter couldn't believe fully that Jesus rose from the dead. Peter could not connect this to the Old Testament and to all what Jesus had taught them before he died. In the same way, Jesus appeared to them when they were gathered, all these 12 guys and all the other females. There Jesus came. And he came again with them when Thomas was asking for a very radical and very, very concrete sign. And Jesus gave that concrete sign. We would say that Thomas is the one who couldn't believe. That is how I have read this several times. I have heard this several times. People say that Thomas was the one who did believe. But I feel that Thomas believed, but Peter didn't believe. John couldn't believe. That is the truth. Because if they believed, it would be followed by action. If you believe certain thing, if you are 100% certain that this is true, then you would act accordingly. I'm a homeopathic doctor. If I believe that homeopathy can heal nobody, I would never give any medicine to anybody. But if I know and I believe that homeopathy works and acts, I would want to practice, I would want to give the medicine to heal people. If you believe that there is a bus stop, bus stand, and there is a bus, and you can go there and you can board the bus, you can buy the ticket, and then you can travel to this particular place, you would go for it. But if you believe there is no bus stop itself, or there is a hartal, is what you believe, or there is a war happening and there is a curfew, you wouldn't go out. If you believe it's a holiday and buses are on strike or for some reason, you wouldn't go out. It's your belief that decides how you are going to act. So if you believe that Jesus rose again and he has commissioned you to preach the good news of his resurrection and his kingdom to all people, and if you really believe it, and you have the Holy Spirit and the authorization letter directly from him, you must go. You would go. You would not be sitting like this. You would be going and doing it. But Peter was thinking about going back to fish. So it's not about the 3 denials of Peter that Jesus is correcting here. No. In a sense, you can connect both, but in reality, Jesus is not making him confess 3 times, as if, some people have this idea, like if you curse somebody 3 times, if you bless 3 times, they will be blessed again. That's not how it works. Okay. Even if you bless them 1 time, that would be sufficient. Even if you forgive them, that would be sufficient. Even those curses may not happen because you may not have meant those things, those words that you said. So don't worry about it. Like, okay, he confessed 3 times, so we have to make him confess 3 times in this way. That is the general understanding that I find people have. That is not true. That is not the connection here. The connection here of Peter's denial 3 times and Peter being made to confess that he loves Jesus 3 times, again, is a different level of connection. It's not about Peter acknowledging that Jesus is Lord and denying Jesus' lordship. Peter was not denying Jesus' lordship even when he denied knowing Jesus. You know, Peter knew in his heart that Jesus is Lord, and he knew Jesus is the Messiah. Everything he knew, but he was not able to believe, given the setting and environment, that Jesus is going to escape and they will not have any problem. He understood that this is a very difficult and challenging time in Jesus' life and in our life, and if we get caught, we are gone. That's why he denied. And Jesus had prayed 3 times about his denial. And there is that connection, of course. I'm not denying the connection. I'm saying that is not the immediate connection. The immediate connection here is Jesus, resurrected Jesus, appearing 3 times and giving them the command to do what he told them to do the first time, be fishers of men, and still they are not able to do it. The resurrected Jesus came 3 times to Peter, appeared in a sense to Peter and John and James 3 times, and still they are not able to accept the calling on their life. That is a hardness of heart God is addressing here. And he makes him confess 3 times in this sense. He's rather helping Peter understand that if he really loves Jesus and if he really loves God, he should not be thinking about fishing and thinking about fish and provision. Rather, he should be thinking about how he can be useful to God. He should be thinking about how he can feed the lamb, the sheep, and take care of them. Like Moses was. After Moses was commissioned, Moses was not thinking about how to earn a lot of money to save all these Hebrew slaves from the Pharaoh. Even in the wilderness, when Moses was leading them and they cried for meat and they said that we have been eating meat and onions and all those stuff when we were in Egypt, Moses was not, trying to get them food. He was not planning to kill all the sheep and bring them the meat. Instead, he cried to God, because his function was to feed these people from God. That is what Jesus is talking about here. You're still concerned about the fish. Where will this provision come from? That's what you are still concerned about. But I already have the fish, and the fish is cooked and you can eat. You have to do the mission, and whatever you need, the provision would come. The provision is something that follows you. Yahweh is your shepherd. Goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life if you follow Yahweh. So Peter is so caught up